Welcome to the last of 5 video lectures on William Shakespeare's history play, Henry IV, Part 1. In this video lecture, we'll finish up the play, working through Act 5, as we move toward that culminating battle, that one-on-one fight between Prince Hal and Hotspur that we've been working up toward the entire play. All right, Act 5, Scene 1 starts off with the king. And we're on the battlefield. There's no fighting yet. This is still the preliminary stage. And Uncle Worcester, who is uncle to Hotspur, along with Vernon, has come along, and they are parleying before the fight. And the king welcomes them, and he in this scene is going to once again offer peace. We're going to find out that Worcester has no intention, though, of accepting peace. All right, Act 5, Scene 1, Line 9. Make sure your book is open and that you're following along with me while I read. How now, my lord of Worcester? 'Tis not well that you and I should meet upon such terms as now we meet. You have deceived our trust and made us doff our easy robes of peace to crush our old limbs in ungentle steel. He's wearing heavy armor and he's an old man. Why would you do this to an old man, to an old king? We are older than we should be better than this. This is not well, my lord. This is not well. What say you to it? Will you again unknit this churlish knot of all abhorred war? Will you once again bring England to another civil war? Will you again unknit this churlish knot of all abhorred war, and move in that obedient orb again where you did give a fair natural light, and be no more an exhaled meteor, a prodigy of fear, and a portent of breached mischief to the unborn times? This is a great metaphor that Henry IV has created in these lines. He's comparing Worcester, Hotspur's uncle, to a meteor. In Shakespeare's time, the idea, the metaphor of the world was that the king stood at the center of the world and everything revolved around him. A meteor, though, comes crashing into the earth, and it is either destroyed by the atmosphere in doing so, or it creates destruction upon the earth, one or the other. Worcester is like a meteor in doing so. When you do see meteors, the ones that burn up in the sky, like we saw in Julius Caesar, like we see in Macbeth, these are prodigies of fear. They are portents of something bad to come. Why, Worcester, are you acting like a bad sign of something to come? Why are you acting like a meteor of breached mischief to the unborn times? Now, we sort of know what's going to happen at the end of this battle. I don't think I'm spoiling it too much. We know there's a Henry IV Part 2. We know there's a Henry V. So we don't know exactly how we're going to get there yet, but you do know there's another part coming. We also know, though, that there are other history plays after this tetralogy. The Henry VI plays. The War of the Roses is to come. And here, Henry IV, even though he wouldn't have known it in his own life, he feared that. He feared the unborn times. And Worcester, in this sense, as a meteor, becomes a portent for those wars of the roses that are to come. This battle here, even though we sort of already know what's going to happen in the immediate future, this is not going to be the end of the civil strife throughout England, the end of this battle between Edward III's heirs over who should be king. And in fact, it's just the beginning of that. Moving on. I just have to point out very quickly, line 78, hurly-burly. If you've read Macbeth, you know that word from the very beginning of the play. Just one of my favorite of words that Shakespeare has not sure if he created that word or not, but it's definitely a favorite of mine, hurly-burly innovation. Now, as the king, the Worcester gets his chance. He speaks. He gets quite a few lines here, and he pleads his case, not very convincingly, at least not to the king, and certainly not to Prince Hal, who's also present here in this scene. But Prince Hal has another idea. Instead of going to war, let me face off one-on-one against Hotspur. In fact, that's what we've been waiting for, right? Line 85. Follow along with me. Prince Hal says to Worcester, let me one-on-one. No one else has to die. Let us fight. 985. Tell your nephew, Hotspur, tell your nephew that the Prince of Wales doth join with all the world in praise of Henry Percy. Remember, Henry Percy is another name, is Hotspur's real name. Hotspur is more of a nickname. The Prince of Wales doth join with all the world in praise of Henry Percy. By my hopes, this present enterprise set off his head. I do not think a braver gentleman, more active, valiant, or more valiant young, more daring, or more bold, is now alive to grace this latter age with noble deeds. There's nobody whose deeds are more noble than Hotspur's. And Prince Hal's about to say, not even my own. I haven't done anything to the level he's done. So he's really honoring his arch enemy here, his nemesis. These two do not necessarily hate one another. Prince Hal and Hotspur have a sort of almost an affection for one another, and you can hear it in Prince Hal's words. For my part, I may speak it to my shame. I have a truant been to chivalry. A truant is someone who's absent. He's been absent to chivalry. And so I hear he doth account me too. Yet this, and here's where he lays down the challenge, yet this before my father's majesty, in front of my father, in front of the king, I am content that he shall take the odds of his great name and estimation, and will, to save the blood on either side, try fortune with him in a single fight. Let's save the blood, let's save lives, and let me fight one-on-one with Hotspur. We're going to find out later Vernon is quite impressed with Prince Hal's lines. We'll get to that in a moment. Worcester less so. He doesn't get to say anything, but he wants a war. He wants a fight. And if you remember back to Act 1, he was the one who came up with the idea that this battle would happen. It was his plot from the very beginning. Hotspur agreed, Northumberland agreed, eventually Douglas, Mortimer, all these other of the rebels agreed. But initially, this was Worcester's idea. So he's here. Nothing. I don't think anything that the king said, that Prince Hal said, would have brought Worcester to a point where he wanted peace. Now, King Henry decides he can't allow his eldest son, the Prince of Wales, the next in line to be king, he's not going to let him fight in one-on-one combat. It's interesting, though, he'll let him fight on the battlefield, where he could potentially die, but not in one-on-one combat. And I think part of that goes back to, King Henry thinks highly of his son, but he thinks, I think, at least in terms of battle, even more highly of Hotspur. If you go back to Act 1, he had said of Hotspur, I wish my sons had traded places when they were infants, and that Hotspur was my son and Prince Hal would have been Percy, Northumberland's son. I don't know if he wishes that anymore. His opinion of Prince Hal has gone up a lot over the course of the play since Act 3. But he doesn't want his son facing off against Hotspur one-on-one. Hotspur is the warrior of England. He is the greatest warrior of England at this point, at least in terms of the play, and Henry knows that, and he doesn't want Prince Hal fighting him one-on-one. Keep going. Follow along with me. I'm picking up right where I left off. Line 101. And Prince of Wales, so dare we venture thee, we would venture thee, we would let you make this fight, albeit considerations infinite do make against it. So if we consider it thoughtfully, infinitely, deeply, it's not a good idea. It's a terrible idea to put the Prince of Wales into single combat against so great a warrior. No, good Worcester, no. He turns to Worcester here. We love our people well, and here he's going to make the case once again. I will pardon everybody. Let's just all go home peacefully and let things be the way they were. I'll forgive the wrong. I'll forgive this civil war that you've tried to start. We can just go home. Do make against it. No, good Worcester, no. We love our people well, even those we love that are misled upon your cousin's part. And will they take the offer of our grace, both he and they and you? Yet every man shall be my friend again, and I'll be his. So tell your cousin, go tell Hotspur this, and bring me word what he will do. But if he will not yield, rebuke and dread correction wait on us, and they shall do their office. So be gone. And he doesn't give Worcester a chance to answer. Much like in Act 1, he dismisses Worcester there. He dismisses him here again. Worcester did get a chance to speak in this scene. He did it in Act 1. But he doesn't get a chance to speak fully. And he doesn't get a chance to speak again after the king. The king demands that he gets the last word. This offer is the last word. So be gone. We will not now be troubled with reply. We offer fair. Take it advisedly. And Worcester, Vernon, they leave at this point. The king and Prince Hal have a moment. Prince Hal says, "It will not be accepted on my life." He doesn't believe that this offer will be accepted by the rebels. Hotspur will accept it. At this point, the king exits, and left on stage is just one more moment, and we're gonna have several moments like this in Act 5 between Prince Hal and Falstaff. And Falstaff has a tender line here. Falstaff doesn't have too many tender lines. Mostly he's comic, but here he has a tender one. Line 125, he says, "I would 'twere bedtime, Hal, and all well. I wish this was over." He wants that peace that the king offers. Maybe it's out of fear. Maybe it's not out of chivalry. But he wants peace. And I think that's what most of us want, right? Maybe that's what makes Falstaff relatable, because at least in the 21st century, I'm not eager to go off to war. I can't imagine that most people who are thoughtful are eager to go off to a war that's going to destroy so many lives. And in that, we are like Falstaff. However, I would hope we're also a little more chivalrous too, in that if something, well, let's look at Falstaff. This is one of Falstaff's great soliloquies. Prince Hal responds, "Why? Thou owest God a death. Everyone has to die at some point. Why not die with honor?" And Falstaff, he doesn't want to die with honor. He doesn't want to die at all, with or without honor. Honor means nothing. And this is the great speech. So continuing, line 127. Prince Hal just said, why thou owest God a death? 'Tis not due yet. I would be loath to pay him before his day. What need I be so forward with him that calls not on me? Death hasn't called on me. God hasn't called on me to die. Why should I go out and offer to die? Well, 'tis no matter. Honor pricks me on. I have to go fight for honor. And then he's about to he completely tears apart the notion of honor here, though, afterward. Honor pricks me on. But how if honor pricks me off? When I come on, how then? Can honor set to a leg? If I lose my leg, can honor give me back my leg? No. Or an arm? No. Or take away the grief of a wound? No. Honor hath no skill in surgery? Then, no. Well, what is honor? A word. What is in that word? Honor. What is that? Honor. Air. A trim reckoning. Who hath it? He that died a Wednesday, doth he feel it? No. Doth he hear it? No. 'Tis insensible then, yea, to the dead? But will it not live with the living? No. Why? Detraction will not suffer, therefore, I'll none of it. Honor is a mere scutcheon. And so ends my catechism. However, Falstaff, nonetheless, despite this discarding honor, goes off to war nonetheless. Act 5, Scene 2. Worcester makes a decision. He does not go to Hotspur and tell him of the king's offer. We knew that Blunt had offered it before, but Worcester isn't going to tell him that it's been offered again, that it's still on the table. In fact, he makes the case that it's no longer on the table. He directly lies to Hotspur here. Worcester, right at the beginning of Act 5, Scene 2. "Oh no, my nephew must not know Sir Richard Vernon, the liberal and kind offer of the king. I'm not going to tell him this offer." And then a little later he explains why. Line 16. He doesn't trust the king's word, for one. He doesn't trust that, at least he knows he will be punished for this. He doesn't believe that the king will actually pardon him. He might pardon Hotspur, he might pardon others, but Worcester is convinced he will not be pardoned. And that makes sense. I can believe that maybe Henry lied in that, perhaps. I can see certainly where Worcester would believe he was lying. They didn't have a good relationship. Even in Act 1 we saw it. Line 16. "My nephew's trespass may be well forgot. It had the excuse of youth and heat of blood and an adopted name of privilege. A harebrained Hotspur, governed by a spleen. All his offenses live upon my head, and on his father's. Remember, that's Northumberland, his father, the one who's not at this battle, though he is sick at home. We did train him on. Remember in Act 1, they did train him on. They urged Hotspur to this fight. It was Worcester's idea. And his corruption being ta'en from us, we as the spring of all shall pay for all. Therefore, good cousin, talking to Vernon, therefore, good cousin, let not Harry Hotspur, know in any case the offer of the king. So as Vernon and Worcester are talking, then all of a sudden here comes Hotspur, Douglas with him, and listen to what this is. Jump to line 34. Worcester says to Hotspur, "There is no seeming mercy in the king." We as an audience know there was. He wanted to offer peace. Worcester lies. There is no seeming mercy in the king. He goes on another line down. I told him gently of our grievances, of his oath breaking, which he mended thus, by now forswearing that he is forsworn. He calls us rebels, traitors, and will scourge with haughty arms this hateful name in us. Worcester goes on then to tell Hotspur. Now he's going to tell him, though, about what Prince Hal said. And it's very interesting. Almost every scene that Prince Hal's in, almost every scene that Hotspur's in, they reference the other. They've never met in person. Not yet. They're going to. But they've never met in person, but they're constantly talking about each other. And here Worcester mentions the Prince of Wales and his offer of single combat. Line 45. Make sure you're following along with me while I read. The Prince of Wales stepped forth before the king, and nephew challenged you to single fight. Hotspur here makes it clear he would have agreed if that had been an option. Remember, it wasn't an option because Henry IV immediately said, no, you're not going to do that. Line 47, oh, would the quarrel lay upon our heads, and that no man might draw short breath today, but I and Harry Monmouth. Prince Hal is sometimes called Harry Monmouth or Henry Monmouth because that's the city where he was born, in Monmouth. So he gets all these names. He's Prince Hal, he's Henry V, he's Hal, Henry, he's not Bolingbroke, that's his father. But he also gets this Monmouth is his name. Tell me, how showed his tasking? Seemed it in contempt? Did he ask just in contempt, or did he mean it? Was he chivalrous? Vernon's the one who gave Prince Hal, all of this praise in Act 4. He continues in Act 5 to pour on the praise. He's really in awe of Prince Hal, even though they're enemies. No, by my soul, I never in my life did hear a challenge urged more modestly, unless should a brother dare to gentle exercise and proof of arms. He gave you all the duties of a man, trimmed up your praises with a princely tongue, spoke your deservings like a chronicle, making you ever better than his praise, by still dispraising praise valued with you. And, which became him like a prince indeed, he made a blushing sightle of himself, and chid his truant youth with such a grace as if he mastered there a double spirit of teaching and of learning instantly. And there did he pause. But let me tell the world, if he outlived the envy of this day, England did never owe so sweet a hope, so much misconstrued in his wantonness. This whole play is about honoring Henry V. Remember, it's written some 200 years after Henry V lived. Shakespeare is giving honor to this prior king, and certainly here we can hear that in Vernon's lines. Hotspur even says afterward, cousin, I think thou art enamored on his follies, enamored in love with. I think you're in love with his follies. Jump to Act 5, Scene 3, and now it's too late to talk about peace. Act 5, Scene 3, the war is underway. Blunt comes on stage, and Douglas, but we don't know it's Blunt. Blunt has taken, and he has dressed himself as King Henry. And this was actually a pretty normal practice in this time, where the king would have several in the field dressed as him. There would be many fake imposters to the king. It sort of has a very Macbeth kind of feel here, if you're familiar with that play. These last scenes feel a little bit like that, too. There was a pretend look-alike in that play as well. Line 16, Douglas has killed Blunt, and this is Blunt's end. But Douglas doesn't realize, he thinks he's killed the king. He says to Hotspur, as Hotspur enters after the battle, after the two men have fought and Blunt has lost, all's done, all's won, here breathless lies the king. This is line 16. Make sure you're following along. Line 16, Act 5, Scene 3. All's done, all's won, here breathless lies the king. Where? Here! This Douglas? No, I know this face full well. A gallant knight he was. His name was Blunt, semblably furnished like the king himself, furnished, dressed like the king himself. Ah, fool, go with thy soul whither it goes. And he would have maybe a Scottish accent here too, because remember Douglas is a Scot. He's the Douglas. I can't do a Scottish accent very well, so I won't. But you can imagine a really talented actor here would have a very distinctive voice. A fool, go with thy soul whither it goes. A borrowed title hast thou brought too dear. Why didst thou tell me thou wert a king? And then here Hotspur says, the king hath many marching in his coats, many dressed like himself, fighting in this battle. Douglas, this line is funny. Now by my sword I'll kill all his coats. I'll murder all his wardrobe. I'll murder all his clothes, piece by piece, until I meet the king. And they exit and leave the body of Blunt lying there. And on stumbles Falstaff, and Falstaff sees the body. Line 31, switching to prose. Soft, who are you? Sir Walter, there's honor for you. It's dead. There's honor for you. And then he goes on and he gives us, remember he had those soldiers that he'd commissioned. And remember he didn't get the best soldiers. He got, in fact, probably the worst soldiers you could imagine. Line 34, he reveals to us what's happened to them in the battle. I have led my ragamuffins where they are peppered. Peppered means killed. There's not 3 of my 150 left alive, and they are for the town's end to beg during life. But who comes here? And then Prince Hal enters, and he chides Falstaff. Why are you sitting there? And something has happened. We don't know exactly what, but Prince Hal's lost his sword, and he needs a sword. So he asks Falstaff for his. What, stands thou idle here? Lend me thy sword. Many a nobleman lies stark and stiff under the hoofs of vaunting enemies, whose deaths are yet unrevenged. I prithee, lend me thy sword. Oh hell, I prithee give me leave to breathe a while. Turk Gregory never did such deeds in arms as I have done this day. I have paid Percy. I've made him sure. What a lie. He has not killed Percy. He's not killed Hotspur. He is indeed alive and living to kill thee. I prithee, lend me thy sword. Nay, before God, Hal, if Percy be alive, thou getst not my sword, but take my pistol if thou wilt. Give it me. What is in the case? Aye, Hal, 'tis hot, 'tis hot. There's that will sack a city. And he's, instead of... Falstaff's always joking, even in a moment like this. He gives him his some sack. He gives him his drink, some alcohol. And the prince pulls it out, and he's like, this isn't a pistol. This isn't a weapon. And he's, what? Is it a time to jest and dally now? He throws the bottle down, and he goes back to find himself a sword and rejoin the battle. By the next time we see him, he'll have another sword. If you are the Prince of Wales, it's not hard to find a sword on a battlefield. You can get someone to give it to you. But not Falstaff. Falstaff didn't give him one when he needed it. Falstaff once more looks at that body. He says, I like not such grinning honor as Sir Walter had. He's grinning in death. His dead corpse is grinning. That's not the honor Falstaff wants. He doesn't want any honor. Act 5, Scene 4. We jump up. Act 5, Scene 4, Douglas appears on stage again, and he finds the king, finally. The real king. Who's not just dressed like the king, but he actually comes upon King Henry, and he fights him, and he almost wins. He almost kills him. But Prince Hal comes on stage, and he's able to save his father. And after Douglas is chased away, Douglas isn't killed, but he's chased away. Line 47, Act 5, Scene 4, line 47. Make sure you're following along with me while I read. Stay and breathe a while. Thou hast redeemed thy lost opinion, and showed thou make some tender of my life. You've redeemed any lost opinion I ever had of you, son. You've earned it back by saving my life from Douglas. And showed thou make some tender of my life in this fair rescue thou hast brought to me. And at this point, the king exits. And as he's exiting, he goes off. However you make this transition on stage, the king has to leave the stage. And finally, now we reach the climax of the play. That battle royal we've been waiting for at the end. Hotspur versus Prince Hal. Jump down to line 59. Hotspur comes on stage, and maybe Prince Hal's back is turned here. I like to imagine him hearing Hotspur before he sees him. They've never been together on stage before. The text suggests they've never even seen each other before in person. They've only heard of one another. Line 59, Hotspur says, if I mistake not, thou art Harry Monmouth. It reminds me a lot of Macbeth in this scene when Macduff in that play says, turn, hellhound, turn, and he walks on stage and sees Macbeth, and you can imagine Macbeth turning around in that scene. Here I imagine Prince Hal turning around now and seeing Hotspur. Thou speaks as if I would deny my name. Hotspur says, my name is Harry Percy. Why, then I see a very valiant rebel of thy name. I am the Prince of Wales, and think not Percy to share with me in glory any more. 2 stars. So yet another metaphor drawing upon the stars, just like King Henry started the act with. 2 stars keep not their motion in one sphere, nor can one England brook a double reign of Harry Percy and the Prince of Wales. Nor shall it, Harry. It's a little confusing because it's 2 Harrys facing off. This is Hotspur talking. Nor shall it, Harry, for the hour is come to end the one of us. And who would to God thy name in arms were now as great as mine? I'll make it greater ere I part from thee, and all the budding honors on thy crest I'll crop to make a garland for my head. Hotspur's not a man of words. This again reminds me of Macbeth and Macduff as they fight, because Macduff says something similar. He says, I no more words, let's fight. Hotspur in this line says, I can no longer brook thy vanities. And the battle begins. They fight. And this is a moment that doesn't get very many lines. They don't get lines while they're fighting at all until the fight's over. But you as a director or as an actor or as a reader imagining this in your mind, get to imagine this fight. Now, Falstaff is in the background. This is an interesting touch. Falstaff is in the background and he sees the fight happening. He, of course, is rooting for Prince Hal to win. 975, well said, Hal. To it, Hal. Nay, you shall find no boys play here, I can tell you. So he's quietly, he's probably hidden. I don't know if anyone can hear him but the audience. I don't think he wants to draw Hotspur's attention, this warrior's attention. Falstaff's not here to fight. But he is here. He is rooting on his friend, rooting on Prince Hal. And Hotspur loses. Hotspur is killed at the end of this battle. And we knew that was coming. Shakespeare's audience knew what was coming too. They knew Henry V was a great king and that this story was to honor him. So this isn't a surprise, but yet they still would have expected a good fight scene between these two as the play starts to wind down and come to its conclusion here. Line 77, Hotspur says, "Oh, Harry, thou hast robbed me of my youth." He gets one more speech before he dies. That speech ends, line 85. He's talking to himself here, referring to himself. Now, no, Percy, thou art dust and food for, and that line, and food for, there's 3 beats that he gets, and then there's 7 silent beats as he dies, and Hal finishes his line. He had said, "No, Percy, thou art dust and food for worms, brave Percy. Fare thee well, great heart." He has respect for Hotspur, even though they fought, even though he's killed him in battle. A lot of the chivalric code, chivalry says that you do have respect for the men that you fight. It's not a slaughter. It shouldn't be a slaughter. It should be a good, fair fight between two chivalrous men. For worms, brave Percy, fare thee well, great heart. Ill-weaved ambition, how much art thou shrunk! When that this body did contain a spirit, a kingdom for it was too small a bound. When you had a spirit in this body, it was too big a spirit for the whole kingdom. But now, 2 paces of the vilest earth, about 6 feet or so of the vilest earth, is room enough. It's an interesting comment on how big our soul is, how small our body is. I love how Shakespeare puts this bit of poetry here, this deep, thoughtful poetry here. Now, as that's happening, as they're in their final fight scene, there's actually a second fight scene happening at the same time, and it doesn't get any lines. And how you do it as a director, you get some choice. But Douglas enters on the other side of the stage, and he sees Falstaff, and they fight. And Falstaff, in self-preservation, pretends to die. Now, whether or not we as the audience know he's dead or not, I mean, we do because we're going to read it here in a moment. We've read this. But if you're first time seeing this, you don't know for sure if you might not know if Falstaff's really dead, or maybe it's very comic. Maybe he pretends to die in a way that convinces Douglas, but in no way convinces the audience. Well, either way, it's convinced Prince Hal. And when he turns around, walks away from the body of Hotspur, he sees his friend Falstaff dead as well. Line 102. What, old acquaintance? Could not all this flesh keep in a little life? Poor Jack, farewell. Um, and then he says here, there's some humor in this when Falstaff has to wake up. He says, line 109 to 110, Prince Hal says, "Embowelled will I see thee by and by, prepared for a proper funeral." Embowelled, have your bowel, it's a funeral process. "Embowelled will I see thee by and by, till then in blood by noble Percy lie." So lay here, but I will have a proper burial for you. He exits, and it has to be quick enough so that the word embowelled is still in the audience's ears. Embowelled! "If thou embowel me today, I'll give you leave to powder me and eat me tomorrow. God's blood! 'Twas time to counterfeit, time to fake death, to counterfeit death. Or that hot Turgament Scott had paid me," the hot Turgament Scott being the Douglas. "And lot, too, counterfeit, I lie." And then he goes on. He's got a great line in the middle of this, too. "The better part of valor is discretion." That might be a phrase you've heard before. That's Shakespeare. That's Falstaff, too. Moving on, the end of the scene, Falstaff gets up. He carries the body of Hotspur, and he claims that he has killed it. Prince Hal knows that that's not true. It must be a very interesting emotional moment to see this old friend Falstaff alive again, who you thought was dead, but at the same moment to realize he must have been faking his own death in order to avoid instead of showing any courage whatsoever. Line 137. Falstaff has dragged the body of Hotspur with him, claiming it as his own, that he's killed it. And Prince Hal says, "Why, Percy, I killed myself, and saw thee dead." And Falstaff, "Didst thou? Lord, how this world is given to lying. I grant you, I was down and out of breath, and so was he, but we rose both at an instant, and fought a long hour by Shrewsbury clock. If I may believe so, if not, let them that should reward valor bear the sin upon their own heads. I'll take it upon my death. I gave him this wound in the thigh." And he did. He stabbed his dagger into the thigh. So he's not lying. He did give him a wound in the thigh, but he was already defeated. He was already dead. If the man were alive and would deny his ounce, I would make him eat a piece of my sword." Prince John is there. That's Prince Hal's younger brother. "This is the strangest tale that ever I heard." And Prince Hal says, "This is the strangest fellow, Brother John." And here's an interesting moment. Prince Hal says to Falstaff, "Come, bring your luggage nobly on your back. For my part, if a lie may do thee grace, I'll gild it with the happiest terms I have." He's going to let Falstaff have credit for killing Hotspur, for defeating Hotspur. Interesting. All right, Act 5, Scene 5 is a very short scene. Cleans up the action of the battle and sets up Henry IV, Part 2. You'll remember at the end of Act 4, we heard from York. York was afraid that if Hotspur lost and his army lost, that King Henry IV would be coming for him next. Well, here we find out that is indeed the case. Line 34, the King Henry IV, it's his play. It's named after him. He gets the last lines of the play. And in doing so, he sets up Part 2. "Then this remains, that we divide our power. You, son John," we just met Prince John. We'd met him earlier in the play, of course, too. But he was the one with Prince Hal a moment ago. "You, son John, and my cousin Westmoreland, towards York shall bend you with your dearest speed to meet Northumberland and the prelate Scroop, who, as we hear, are busily in arms." So we've heard that they were part of this rebel alliance, even though they weren't here today. We're going to go take care of that. That's what you're to do. And then him and Prince Hal, "Myself and you, son Harry, will towards Wales, to fight with Glendower and the Earl of March." We're going to go fight Glendower. Earl of March is another name for Edmund Mortimer. He's the Earl of March. So we're going to divide our army in half. You're going to go to York, take care of those guys, Prince John. Me and Prince Hal, we're headed to face Glendower and take him out. "Rebellion in this land shall lose his sway, meeting the check of such another day. And since this business so fair is done, let us not leave till all our own be won." Let us not leave until everything is taken care of. And so ends this first part of Henry IV, but sets up the action of the second part of Henry IV. And so concludes at this point the series of 5 video lectures on William Shakespeare's history play, Henry IV, Part 1. I hope you've enjoyed reading this play. I hope you've enjoyed spending this time with me as we've worked through and discussed the play in the video lectures. Thank you.